A damning report says our Defence Force is not in a fit state to respond to future challenges, and the government has announced a fundamental change in its role. The force will move away from its passive and humanitarian focus and towards being combat ready. The fighting force will become more modern and relevant. Defence Minister Andrew Little says we no longer have a choice because we do not live in a benign strategic environment. Political reporter Lloyd Burr explains what needs to change and how much it'll cost.
A croissant, a Danish and some Kransky sausages for our top brass. One by one serving up their own buffet of bombshells.
Aotearoa New Zealand is facing more geostrategic challenges than we have had in decades. We need the strategies and the capabilities to respond. Having a combat-capable ready force that protects New Zealand and our interests.
It's a fundamental change in approach, pivoting from a largely humanitarian defence force to an offensive defence force.
The strategic environment has deteriorated more quickly than we imagined. The threats that New Zealand face are becoming more complex and more challenging.
They're outlined in these three documents, essentially pointing the finger at China for its militarisation and destabilisation of the Pacific.
Unexpected events don't queue up waiting for us to deal with them. The Defence Force needs to be equipped as a capable, effective and as protected as possible.
It's a step change that's seemingly come out of nowhere, surprising commentators.
And this may seem extreme, but we are preparing for World War III, it seems. I think that is dramatic. I think there are alternatives. I think New Zealand could also focus on dialogue, de-escalation, diplomacy.
The government's plan will be expensive. We currently spend 1% of GDP on defence, around $3.8 billion a year.
We will probably have to spend more in terms of a proportion. We don't know what that is because we need that capability work to be done.
And there's a lot of it. The Army's LAVs, 20 years old. The Navy's frigates, Te Mana and Te Kaha, 26 years old. The repurposed Manawanui was built 20 years ago. HMNZS Canterbury is 16 years old. The inshore patrol vessels, 14 years old. Our offshore patrol vessels, 13 years old. In the Air Force, the 757s are 30 years old. The second-hand Sea Sprite helicopters, decades old. The A109s getting on as well, 12 years old. They all need replacing, and there'll be new equipment too, including
drones.
Or bringing back jet fighters.
Are you considering bringing back an air combat wing?
No.
Military procurement takes years of planning and years of building, and with the state of Defence Force assets at the moment, that process needs to start pronto.
Lloyd, we've known for a long time that our Defence Force is subpar, so why the big change right now?
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to find out today, because these threats aren't new, right? China's expansionism in the Pacific, that's not new. These other threats that were outlined in these reports, they are not new. Maybe it's just because there's been chronic underfunding of the Defence Force for decades, chronic underappreciation of the Defence Force for decades. But there is one train of thought, and that's that Andrew Little's also the Minister for the SIS, the GCSB, the spying agencies, the Five Eyes. He is privy to a lot of information. Maybe he is privy to some information that suggests this step change for the Defence Force is needed.
Lloyd Burr there live from Parliament. Thanks so much.